We need to be put in check. If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
Welcome back to ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy. Now I know what you're thinking. Is it really relevant to analyze who was right in Captain America Civil War? The movie came out like 6 years ago. But the central ideological conflict of the movie is still very much relevant, now more than ever. The movie dealt with a really powerful debate on superhero accountability. Though despite all the incredible kicking and punching, the movie never answered the question of who was right, Captain America or Iron Man. And it seems like Marvel Studios, as well as all its heroes, pretty much forgot about this as well. Because Thanos showed up and the debate around superhero supervision, it got dusted. Since then, no one's talking about this, but we didn't forget and we are here to remind the Avengers that the bill comes due, now more than ever.
You still think there will be no consequences, Strange? No price to pay?
Tony was all in for government supervision, believing that the Avengers must be held accountable for their mistakes. The only path forward is for the Avengers to register and be overseen by the government. Now Steve, on the other hand, believed that the Avengers must remain autonomous, free to take action in the world and use their abilities without the limitations of government supervision. So who's right here? Well, you might be surprised by our answer, because Steve was wrong, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Tony was right. Because while Steve is wrong, he's also right in principle. And while Tony is right, to a certain degree, he's mostly wrong.
I request elaboration.
So, before we explain what Captain America was so wrong about, let's start with Iron Man. After one too many collateral mishaps, the Avengers face the consequences for their actions as independent heroes. Now, while they save the world, they do tend to leave a lot of havoc behind them. This leads to the Sokovia Accords, a legal bind that will allow the world's governments to regulate the Avengers. In principle, Tony is absolutely correct that the Avengers can no longer operate without any supervision. Every individual and organization on this planet needs boundaries, laws that keep them on check. After all, no one wants the Avengers to be compared to certain baddies like dictators, am I right? Tony is right to call out the other Avengers and force them to question their dangerous autonomy. But then Tony makes a crucial mistake by saying,
We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game.
whatever form it takes? No, Tony, that's not a good idea to support.
I'm gonna need to see everybody's IDs.
Not our first rodeo, Miss Agent.
I assure you, damage control is only here to ensure your safety.
Is it truly a good thing if the government controls the Avengers? After all, agencies like the CIA, FBI, NSA, and the Army all answer to the government. Though we all know that there's no such thing as the perfect government, I'm not saying that every government is inherently evil. No, but many politicians are self-serving and some are extremely corrupt. And whenever governments get too much control and power, they tend to abuse it, trample civil liberties and even human rights, all in the name of protection and safety.
I thought we were supposed to be fighting terrorists, not flipping some pothead student in Queens to spy on Americans.
Oh my God, what was that?
That's just Business Cat. He's in a real bad mood.
Leave me alone.
Maybe we should get Business Cat a present to cheer him up. But what do you get for a business cat who has everything?
Well, Doug, you could get them the certificate from Established Titles. They're the sponsor of this video. Established Titles is a fun novelty gift that allows you to purchase 1 square foot of land in Scotland, which makes you a Scottish landowner. And according to Scottish custom, this allows you to have the title of Lord or Lady. My own land is on a private nature reserve in Edelston, and my purchase helps to preserve their woodlands. And that's the really cool thing about this certification. It's not just a novelty gift, it helps protect the woodlands of Scotland. With every order, Established Titles plants trees all over the world through their charity partners One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. You get this certificate with an official crest and a unique plot number so you can see the exact location of your land. And then you will be allowed to officially change your name to Lord or Lady. It also makes for a really fun last minute gift. I mean, just look at some of these reactions.
Lord Joe Green.
Yes! Lord Kenneth Delane Albertly.
All right, hey, look at that. You will be calling me Lord!
Established Titles is actually running a massive early Black Friday sale right now. Plus, if you use the code ScreenCrush, you get an additional 10% off. And the first 200 people purchasing a title pack using my link will effectively be next to my plot or within walking distance. So depending on how many people want to be a Lord or Lady, we can have our own little ScreenCrush kingdom. So go to establishedtitles.com/ScreenCrush to get your gifts now and help support our channel. Like, just look at the governments in the MCU. They were willing to nuke New York to save the world from an alien invasion. Oh, and remember Project Insight, the government's big plan to pretty much minority report the world? S.H.I.E.L.D. was going to use 3 helicarriers that will use an algorithm to predict future human threats and eliminate them before they become as such.
We're gonna neutralize a lot of threats before they even happen.
Thought the punishment usually came after the crime.
We can't afford to wait that long.
Look, we can keep going, but we all know that even in the fictional world of the MCU, the government ain't without its many faults, and it seems like things are getting way worse in Phase 4. So, Tony is totally wrong in thinking that the Avengers are better off under the government's full control. Steve said it best.
If we sign this, we surrender our right to choose. What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us?
Steve witnessed why it's dangerous for the government to have too much power. S.H.I.E.L.D. was infiltrated by Hydra, almost taking over the world. So Steve is right to reject the Sokovia Accords. He is correct to not let the government take over the Avengers. But he went wrong in a few places there. First, there's the outright refusal. What's Cap expecting the government to do? Does he honestly believe that because the Avengers reject the Accords that the UN's just going to back down without a fight? I mean, this is the government we're talking about. They were so close to getting what they wanted. They felt it, they smelled it. The most powerful individuals on the planet under their control. No way the government's just going to let something like that go. Considering the collateral damage involved, I'm certain that many are calling for the governments to take drastic actions against these dangerous heroes. We saw the terrifying perspective of people during the Avengers battles, like this perfect shot that encapsulates the horror of the Hulk. From the people below, the Hulk is a monster who jumps from building to building, smashing and destroying, raining debris and death on the people below. So, if the government just backs off, they admit to the rest of the world that they are weaker than the Avengers, that superheroes can do whatever they want, and the world's strongest governments can't do a thing to stop them. And that creates some scary precedents.
You have absolutely no leverage because I am the Homelander, and I really can do whatever the I want.
117 countries have signed that the Avengers must operate under the United Nations, otherwise they're breaking the law. Did Steve Rogers actually think he could tell the world's governments, "No thank you, we reject your laws and we will do whatever we see right, please don't get in our way, we are the Avengers after all"?
Because you need us. Yes, the world is a vulnerable place, and yes, we help make it that way. But we're also the ones best qualified to defend it.
By holding a gun to everyone on Earth and calling it protection.
It's funny because it's true.
Steve essentially put the Avengers at odds with the world's governments, their armies, and their police forces. Now, Captain America is not the sort of guy to fight the government, but things could easily escalate and get violent. If the Avengers refuse the Accords, the governments must take actions to ensure that the rule of law will hold. I mean, when a country decides to unlawfully invade and attack another, the world reacts. Sometimes it can be hefty sanctions against the invading country. Other times, things can escalate to the point of war. The Avengers aren't a country, but they are a global superpower. In fact, they are more powerful than most governments and armies on Earth.
Passing judgment like gods, with our superpowered army and our orbiting death ray, Cadmus is right to be scared. The human race wouldn't stand a chance.
We saw what happened when Steve got in the authorities' way after apprehending Bucky. After the airport fight, most of Team Cap was arrested and put in cells on the raft. Scott was placed under house arrest and the government treated him like a criminal.
Your school has rules, right? Like, you can't draw on the walls. Well, your daddy went to Germany and drew on the walls with Captain America.
Steve, Natasha, and Sam spent 2 years on the run after Civil War. Being a superhero who's considered to be a criminal and a fugitive is probably not a good thing long term.
Thank you, Captain. I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but whatever. I have to show these videos. It's required by the state. Let's do it.
When you think about it, the best thing that happened to Team Cap was Thanos. The snap was like that memory spell from No Way Home because the second the world was at serious risk, everyone just forgot about the Accords. If not for Thanos, who knows how dark things would have gotten with this conflict between the Avengers and the government.
What happens when the shooting starts? What, do you kill Steve Rogers?
If we're provoked.
The truth is that this conflict was avoidable from the start. Steve's mistake is that he dismissed the Accords out of hand. So we've established that the government having full control over the Avengers is bad, but some compromise was necessary here. The Avengers needed to negotiate a diplomatic solution with the government, something that appeases the UN and the rest of the world without giving away their freedom.
It's called diplomacy.
Steve failed to offer any tangible solution. He doesn't even want to meet the government halfway. Steve admits that they are not infallible, but then he also says,
"We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own."
Which is for the most part true. After all, the Avengers are the group that saved the world many times over. But these words can be distorted by some, like what happened with John Walker.
Do you know who I am?
I am Captain America.
He believed that just because he became the new Captain America, then any action he takes is justifiable. And you know what? Carly Morgenthau and the Flag Smashers used this same very principle to justify their actions.
I didn't think there could be another Captain America until I met you. Someone who understands that today's heroes don't have the luxury of keeping their hands clean.
It becomes this dangerous ideology, that idea that we are the good guys, so everything we do is heroic, even if it's not heroic. And our mistakes, no matter how terrible, should just be forgotten because we're the heroes.
The danger with people like him is that we put them on pedestals. They become symbols, icons, and then we start to forget about their flaws.
And that is what Steve did not take into account, that one of these days there would be so many heroes running around on Earth and not all of them would share his morals, which is sort of arrogant of Steve to not even consider. That's why Steve should have thought of a better and more everlasting solution. For example, the Avengers and the UN could form a type of committee that will oversee the Avengers. Nothing too limiting, but it would be a start. The committee would consist of the most reliable heroes, like Steve himself, as well as trustworthy officials, people like Everett Ross, Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and Sharon Carter. Well, okay, before her power broker days. A committee like this would ensure that the power won't go to people like Thunderbolt Ross, who is way too excited to put the Avengers in cages. And we're seeing what's happening in the MCU right now. The government is becoming far more hostile towards superpowered individuals. The Department of Damage Control, for example, is now being used as a police force with military-class weapons and tech. This is the escalation of the Sokovia Accords. This is the result of the Accords failing, and the government now has to take much more drastic actions to achieve what the Accords failed to do. The fact is that a committee like this could have done so much good in the world. See, the Avengers are a reactionary force, but they could do so much more to make the world a better place.
You've got to do better, Senator. You've got to step up.
If Steve thinks that the government is so untrustworthy and the system is broken, why not try to change that system? Fix things for the better. If anyone can do it, it's heroes like himself. And the truth is that the Avengers need some form of supervision. There's no way around that.
Oversight is not an idea that can be dismissed out of hand.
Their mistakes can be catastrophic and end the very lives of the people they're trying to protect. What actions did the Avengers take following Sokovia? Tony Stark was never put on trial for creating a murder bot. He faced no repercussions, no punishment. The Avengers just moved on.
It took me 2 days until I found their bodies. And the Avengers, they went home.
And I ain't saying that the Avengers should have thrown Tony in a cell or anything like that, but perhaps if they oversee and enforce themselves better, then their future mistakes could be prevented, or at the very least minimized. If Phase 4 proves anything, it's that the heroes need to be put in check. Wanda accidentally killing the people in Lagos was unfortunate and terrible. Wanda taking over Westview, well, that was a crime.
She's holding thousands of people hostage.
And it could have been thousands more if she hadn't put up her own quarantine. Yep, she's a real hero.
Not to mention all the terrible things the Scarlet Witch did in Multiverse of Madness. Remember, the world almost ended because Spider-Man and Doctor Strange decided they wanted to mess with memory spells. Maybe all of that could have been prevented if there was some committee in place to oversee superheroes. This way, whenever one of the heroes does something bad, someone can step in and minimize the damage. So Tony was right about supervision. There's no two ways about it. These heroes hold dangerous abilities, the stakes are too high. Some actions must be taken to keep the heroes in check. And the irony here is that now some heroes are acting like actual children. Children who honestly don't seem to care about the consequences of their actions. And they act as if their mistakes are inconsequential. I mean, just look at the opening of Thor: Love and Thunder when he destroyed an ancient religious temple just because he wasn't paying attention during the battle. And Thor just dismisses this like it's not such a big deal. He just demolished their most holy place and he doesn't care.
See, that's your problem, Jimmy. Thinking the ends justify the means. And you're forever shocked when it all blows up in your face.
Not to mention that Thor doesn't even try to negotiate with the attacking aliens. He just goes ahead and kills them all. Yeah, they're all bad and they're all attacking the good aliens, but this goes back to the dangerous idea of we are good, so killing these bad guys is totally okay because they must be evil. Again, these are heroes, so you would expect them to be like, I don't know, heroic? At some point, you gotta wonder if these heroes aren't starting to act like the very villains they're attempting to stop. And if the heroes can't even hold themselves accountable, then how can they really call themselves heroes? And the sad part is that now these heroes don't even operate as a team, so they don't even hold each other accountable. The bottom line is, Captain America was wrong. He wasn't fully wrong, and he was right on a lot of things. He believed in people. He believed that the Avengers were capable of holding themselves accountable. That as individuals, they made the choice to be heroes, to put their lives at risk for the greater good. And because of that, they should have the freedom to operate without the government's say-so. That's all a very good idea on paper, but most things sound good on paper. But many heroes have proven they are incapable of holding themselves accountable. And this is why they make terrible mistakes that at least on one occasion put all of reality at risk. So, in the end, Tony wasn't that far off with his statement that the Avengers had to be put in check. I mean, who knows how things would have turned out if Steve and Tony weren't so busy arguing about their philosophies, each one of them trying to prove why the other one was wrong. If instead they focused on why they were both right to a certain degree, then maybe they might have achieved something truly incredible. But alas, the MCU would have been a very boring franchise, so I guess it's good that Captain America was wrong, at least for the fans. So that's why Captain America was wrong, but what do you think? Could there have been a more diplomatic solution to the Accords? Should superheroes face any form of supervision, or should they be allowed to continue operating as they are now? Hey Doug, did Business Cat like that established title certificate?
I loved it, but I still hate you all.
Drag. Alright, so we want to hear from all of you about this. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe or smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.